I'd like to call the Bella Vista Board of Directors regular meeting July 26th, I should say, to order at this time. If you'd stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the television crew has asked me to remind you to turn your microphone on and speak into it so that they can get their voices when they broadcast, if you would, please. Celebrating success. Doug, I understand you have that tonight.
I do.
Okay.
Testing. I'm here to introduce Mr. Jim Sowers. Jim, are you here today? There you are. If you'd come forward, please. We're glad to have you with us. Jim has been an outstanding employee for the entire time I've supervised him. This is not me speaking. This is his supervisor, Paul Gomez. This is an email that we got regarding Jim. He is never late, always professional, and pays extra attention to detail. He's a retired professor and the military retired. You can see that. He has an engineering background and is extremely precise in the cleaning, staging, and putting away of our golf carts. Jim is the epitome of a whistle-while-you-work kind of person. We are fortunate to have him in our employ. We recently had an unhappy customer who rushed to get his cart to make his tea time and hurried to the tee. Abiding by the Judson rule, Jim allowed the young man to vent his frustration without responding in any kind of way. Jim kept his cool, but was visibly shaken when he relayed his story to me, so it must have been a trying experience. I thanked him for remaining calm and professional and for getting the customer to the tee box and on the course. That's the kind of service and work Jim performs on a regular basis. Just one example of his great service. So if you join me in a round of applause for Jim. Are you presenting the money or mine? Okay. The most important part here, nothing speaks louder than money, so there's a gift certificate for you and a celebrating success certificate of achievement.
Thank you, Jim.
Appreciate it.
At this time, we will approve minutes. Doug, when you get a minute, will you take care of that, please?
Yes, ma'am. So I'll entertain a motion for the June 19th, 2018 board work session meeting minutes. Were these the ones? That,
No, it's the
okay.
next one. It's the next one.
I'll entertain a motion for those minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, David.
Second.
A second by Jerry. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The June 28, 2018 Board of Directors regular meeting minutes were revised. You have a copy there for your consideration. I'll entertain a motion to approve the revised minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. By way of information, there was an executive session called on July 12, 2018, and in that executive session, POA Resolution 2018-03 was passed, and wherein Ms. Ruth Hatcher, Chairperson Hatcher, was authorized to sign POA bank accounts, and then the executive session was concluded at that time.
Okay, any further? Okay, financial report. Dwayne.
All righty. This is the income statement review as of the second quarter, 6 months ending June 2018. Starting with the POA, we'll start with the gross profit section, the income and cost. These are the variances against budget year to date. Facility use fees, you can see the numbers in green are positive, the ones in red are negative. We're going to go through each one and talk about them. Facility use fees is better than budget by $58,000. And you can see the factors. Branchwood, we had budgeted to be closed because of renovation, but we delayed that, and so they're positive to budget $35,000. Photo ID is $21,000. Lake Avalon Beach, the brand new beach, is better than budget the way we had budgeted by $14,000. Gun range 7, pools 5, and F&B discounts are negative to budget of 29. That's the discount you get when you have a photo ID card and you go to our restaurants and get the discount that we offer. Past due collections, here we go. Better by budget by 57,000. Legal is 54,000, Doug's department, and accounting 3,000. Investment income is less than budget by 47,000. Again, as we've seen in prior months, due to less investments potential. Golf is less than budget by 192,000 in golf fees, and primarily weather related, as we've said all along. Looking at the same comparison, but against prior year, food and beverage, we didn't have much food and beverage last year. We had Lake Point for 2 months of operation, just barely open. So they're better by 369. Rebates are negative because we didn't get our Carroll Electric in 2018. It comes every other year. It's the capital credit that they've been issuing for several years. That's 93,000 negative. Past due collections, legal had a large windfall in 2017, and that's 82% of the negative number, and accounting makes up the balance. Donations received, we received the Walton Family Foundation for the Skills Park of $170,000 in 2017, and also the Fly Tires donation for the Loch Lomond dock, $8,000. Investment income is a negative 437. The investments were very good last year. We have less investments this year. Looking at the expense section, going to the operating expenses. This is against budget. Salary and wages, positive 198,000 due to savings and open positions across the divisions. Equipment and tools are better by 123,000. Year-to-date savings on purchases of equipment. Maintenance and repairs are better by 79,000. Year-to-date savings on maintenance-related items. Outside contracts are better by 49,000. These are all positives. Employee benefits are negative by 124. Again, primarily health insurance. We've had higher claims. We're self-employed, we're self-insured, and we have higher claims this year. Prior year variances, other expenses are better by 109. Last year, food and beverage had several expenses in this class. Supplies are negative to prior year by fertilizer and chemicals, more fertilizer and chemicals for the golf courses. Maintenance repairs are negative to 134. Floods are 51,000 of that number, and all increased maintenance across the divisions with the new budget. We budgeted to spend more on maintenance repair across the divisions. Employee benefits are negative by 428. Health insurance, a large part of that number, 307,000. Payroll taxes 80 due to the additional payroll, and 401k contributions 36,000. Salary and wages are negative by 570 compared to prior year. Again, food and beverage, 54% of that number. We have a lot more food and beverage employees. And then other budget changes across the division that the board had approved. Looking at the POA income statement at EBITDA, earnings before income taxes, depreciation, and allocations, 261,000. And at the end of the 6 months, the POA is better than budget by 260,643. That's a good thing. Looking at the water utility, same 6 months review. Starting with the gross profit again. Yeah, you may need to.
I got it for you.
It's not doing very good. Looking at the positives again. Growth, more water usage and connections, 274,000. Water capital buy-in fees, more connections, 222,000. And investment income is negative, less investments, 43,000. Against prior year, water, 296,000. Growth, again, more usage, connections. Water capital buy-in fees, 202 positive. And investments down 117, again, less investments. Moving down to the expense section, looking at operating expense variances. Maintenance and repair, these are smaller variances, 11,000. Equipment repairs. Outside contracts, 13,000 due to service contracts. Credit card fees, more people are using credit card to pay their bill, so credit card usage and bank fees amount for 19,000 variance. And employee benefits, also on water, primary health insurance, 24,000 to budget. Prior year comparisons, Supplies, $20,000. We have more meter installs. We got more home starts. Maintenance repairs, maintenance water distribution equipment, $24,000. Salaries and wages, $36,000. Filling some open positions. And employee benefits, again, primary health insurance, $54,000. And equipment and tools, small equipment purchases that were budgeted in 2018, $117,000 negative. Looking at the EBITDA on the water utility for 6 months running, $426,000. At the end of 6 months, the water utility is better than budget by $426,160. And that concludes my report. Any questions? Yes.
Dwayne, I'd like you to explain to me, you say that water is, the investments are down.
Yes.
Okay. Now, that it seems to me that that's understandable from a POA perspective because we're using reserves to pay for various things. Okay. Why are water investments down?
Well, remember, we're doing the large installation of the meters
Yes.
and so forth.
Okay.
They are
Okay.
down.
Thank you.
That's been
Plus the market's down.
Okay. Thank you.
You got it?
Any other questions?
I just have a couple of questions regarding the individual statements or individual departments. There were several of them in expenses that were considerably, and I'm talking major, difference between actual and budgeted. Is that timing issues?
Well, some of those are actually savings, as we talked about up here.
Uh,
What are you alluding to?
Well, we're with page 17. The golf shop was 21,000 actual, 96,000 budgeted for expenses. Why would they budget that much? Timing?
That's a timing.
And there were several of them timing. And the other one was maintenance and construction, the payroll. 1/3 of the payroll wasn't used. Is that unusual?
Open position.
Okay, all right. Makes
When you
sense.
see those large variances, those are usually what's going
Okay,
on.
all right.
I have a question, Dwayne.
Sure.
In regards to the open positions and our classifying that as savings, I kind of have a hard time with viewing that, like, because we didn't have positions open that we,
No, on here, when he went through and said where, in certain areas, we have true savings, and in other instances, he marked it as open position, but we didn't mark it as savings. I would agree. That's not true savings because that position has not been filled, and we anticipate that it will be filled in the following year, or this year, and then it will impact next year. So he went through and he tried to make sure that he classified whether it was a true savings, meaning a reduction in expenses or a reduction in labor, or whether it was an opening.
do we know how many open positions right now we have currently?
There's about 12 open positions right now, 7 in F&B and the remainder in other positions.
Any other questions for Dwayne?
And those are currently open. Remember, we've been struggling all year long, so in some cases, the savings may have been realized, savings as a result of an open position were realized earlier in the year, so you may actually see some of these variances for the remainder of the year.
Okay, any others? If not, we'll move on to response to last month's open forum. There were no comments, so there will be no response. Open forum at this time. Do we have anybody that would like to speak? John?
Yes, my name is John Nettle. I just questioned that I noticed we didn't have a report on the July 17th executive session.
July 17th?
17.
That was,
Last Thursday.
that had to do with tags.
Tags on the card.
Tags on the cart and the
That was
appeal.
an appeal of a member
Right.
suspension.
Yes.
And so we'll leave it at that it was an appeal of a member suspension, and that the board voted to rescind.
It just has to be reported aloud.
Yeah, thank you.
What it was, it's just that it wasn't reported.
Thank you,
here.
John. I failed to report on that.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Ron? Sure.
There we go. I'm Ron Stratton, previous board chair. Good to see everybody. First, I want to say how much I appreciate this board and your willingness to face the huge challenge that we have in the flooding valley. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of emotion, and the real work just getting started. I have a few comments to make on this, and I've written them down to make sure that I say them accurately, and I'll leave copies here in case anybody wants to clarify what I'm recommending and what my comments are. In my experience, the most valuable process for solving complex business problems is to build financial models with decision trees, starting with all of the possible options. Just defining those can be very difficult. Then modeling each course of action you could possibly take, the probabilities of the various outcomes of each of those actions, and the financial consequences of each of the things that might happen. Then you can compare all of those things objectively and quantitatively. By following this process many times over my career, I learned two big lessons. One, the more factual and detailed your models are, the more likely you are to make good investments and good outcomes instead of bad ones. And just the process of doing the work can be eye-opening and point to different conclusions than you might have expected. We don't know when the next floods will come, and we don't know how big they're going to be, but we can model the financial impact they'll be, from mild to moderate to large floods, even when we do finally have a 100-year event, which we haven't had yet, that closes golf in the valley for an extended time or even indefinitely. What will be the lost revenue, the effect on our employees, our golf staff, on golfers who won't be able to play? What's the impact if 45 of our holes of golf are there, as they are now? What if it's 36 holes? What if it's 27 holes, 18 holes? All those can be modeled and compared. So you have a start. A consultant confirmed what our own analysis had already shown us, that we don't need 6 golf courses. We could get by with four, but our golfers would not be happy with that at all. You're starting the country club analysis. A lot of questions. How many greens need to be moved or elevated? How many holes need to be completely moved or eliminated? What will the course look like? How will it play with elevated greens? It's likely to be expensive. It may take several years. Over that time, savings from Birksdale were intended to make a meaningful contribution to the cost. If we reverse the commitment, continue to allocate resources to Birksdale, despite the fact we don't need 6 golf courses, the obvious question is, where does the money come from? More challenging but much more important questions. Risk-benefit cost comparisons with other potential alternatives, which can be modeled. The question nobody wants to ask should be modeled. The probability that the investment for the country club will even be successful over different time frames, short-term to long-term. I just read that percentage-wise, Northwest Arkansas is now one of the fastest growing areas in the country. Our watershed grew from 7,000 to 87,000 people since the courses were built. So what's that going to look like in 10 years, 20 years, and beyond? What will that mean for future floods? A question some don't even want to consider, and that is, for the long run, if we want to have even 4 golf courses that are sustainable, do we have any other option other than Arkmo for the 4th course? On the other hand, if the growth continues in Northwest Arkansas, Arkmo will be an increasingly valuable asset. Is golf and residential development the best strategy to maximize the value of that asset? Something else? I don't know. But the right question to the right people, many questions, many people, a lot of data gathering, can build a model with a much clearer picture. I don't know the answer to any of these questions. Neither do you, neither do any of our property owners. We can ask opinions, we can have meetings of only golfers, we can ask for a show of hands as the special committee did, but none of us yet have factual, quantitative, comparative basis to form intelligent answers. Without that, we're just groping around in the dark with a lot of people yelling. So to make my main point as briefly as possible, we all get the same 24 hours a day, and how we spend them is critical when we have a big challenge. And I've seen it in companies with very threatening problems that they didn't know how to solve. So they have off-site meetings, they do opinion surveys, they do team building, they appease rumors, they defer to committees and consultants so the responsibility isn't focused quite as brightly on the board and the management. And that's what I saw in companies that failed, when they spend time doing these things instead of building fact-based quantitative outcome probabilities. And the worst is when they believed or tried to convince others that these distractions were actually helping solve the problem. So you have before you tonight a recommendation from your golf special committee to form yet another committee comprised of 3 golf committee members and 3 rec committee members. A natural conflict. Golfers want resources directed toward golf. Rec people want resources directed toward a new community center. More alarming, I emailed the members of the golf special committee and the board, and your spokesperson responded to me that the new committee will do nothing proactively, will only address issues retroactively. Specifically, he wrote, quote, "Since there is no way to predict the frequency or intensity of future floods, a new task force has been formed that will look at future events as they occur." I've never known any scenario where not gathering information, anticipating outcomes, and preparing for them was a good strategy. If you, the board and management, don't believe you have the competence or the time to properly analyze and model our options, then by all means delegate it to someone who does. But please choose people based on their experience with this kind of work and require they do it properly and thoroughly. There are a lot of people with that kind of experience. And please choose people that are as free as possible from bias, personal interests, and opinions. One final point. I analyzed a lot of businesses in my career. I would caution you that when what feels good to management is often the most counterproductive, because they're eager to believe what they want to hear. I'm sure your fresh new look feels better to Tom because the angriest golfers have been appeased and they stopped sending nasty emails. I'm sure it feels better to Ruth because the ladies in the golf groups who were so angry with you are now patting you on the back for Savings Birksdale. That's your closest circle and the people who have the most influence on you. I know. I'm the same. I'm a golfer. I have people who barely speak to me now because I sat in that chair when we had to face this reality. Things feel better if people closest to you aren't mad at you. But the problem hasn't changed. We're no closer to solving it. You represent all property owners. And for every golfer, there are 8 non-golfers whose view is different. That if you don't carry through with your previous commitment of getting the number of golf courses right, making our financial support more equitable, more sustainable, and more predictable, they'll never support anything you propose. And they'll never again believe anything a board tells them. Okay, I know from experience, good solutions to big problems can be identified. It takes a lot of work, it takes some patience. It's hard to get it right. And even then, it's about probabilities and not about certainties. And I know that's hard for property owners. I know they blame you. I know how bad that feels. But I also know we have 38,000 properties, at least 50,000 people who are depending on you to do it well. So again, thank you all for your service. Thank you for taking this huge challenge. There are copies here if anyone is interested to make sure I'm clear. And Godspeed to all of you.
Thank you, Ron. Anybody else for open forum? If not, let's move on to joint advisories. Lakes. Do we have a representative of Lakes?
I'll cover it.
Okay, Tom, would you cover that, please?
Rick Eccles covered a number of issues at the Lakes Committee meeting. First of all, lake treatment is ongoing at this time. We do have some algae. It's that time of year where it's hot. So he was spraying on Loch Lomond today. With the weather starting to break, that will help out quite a bit. We're going to, onto another subject, we're going to initiate the What's a Catch photo contest again that we had last year. A lot of people really enjoyed sending in pictures of the catches they made. In the month of July, our lake rangers made 6,333 contacts with those that were on the lakes and in the parks. We continue to have ongoing sampling of the beach for E. coli to make sure everything is in good shape. In the 3 years that we have been testing, we have never had an issue that is of concern.
Okay, thank you.
And one property owner that attended the meeting remains concerned about wake boat use on the lakes, and the committee talked about that also, and asked Rick to make sure his team continues to have good conversations with the wake boat owners to make sure that they are respectful of other people.
Okay. Any questions? Any further comments on that? If not, we'll move on to recreation. Deb?
I'm going to lower this. I'm Debbie Sorensen. I'm with the Recreation Committee. The committee now, that's the committee is now full, and we started again on July 1st, so we have all our brand new members. And we had 6 visitors at this last meeting to discuss the interest in archery. And so they have promised to get back with us concerning the amount of space that they need and what have you, but that will definitely be a topic now and in the future for all ages that have an interest in archery. Restrooms at Blowing Springs are now finished, which I'm sure people will be happy. The welcome meet and greet was held on June 30th. We had 65 people registered. We had 50 people come. It was the weekend of before the 4th, so I think quite a few people did not come, but we had about 15 people out of that group, and I'm saying that group, these are all brand new residents who had never heard of Bella Vista 2 years ago. And so Kim is now interviewing those different people and trying to figure out how they have found out. Most of the people really have learned about Bella Vista through the magazines, so our family members. The beach has exceeded expectations. July 4th was a very grateful, or a very successful weekend. And the big bike race on the back 40, the trailhead was closed, and that also was very successful. Disc golf is now open at Branchwood, and the golf and tennis camps for the kids have been very, very successful. The one thing I would say is I was at Bergsdale when they were doing the golf camp for the kids, and I don't know how to address it, but the parents were there, and I know the parents have to drive because little kids can't drive the carts around, but the dress etiquette on the women was really bad. And I don't know if it could ever be addressed, but I guess if the moms are there to drive their kids around, can you tell them to wear things besides tank tops?
Were they golfing?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, and so I don't know. I just thought I'd mention that. Bella Vista Magazine will now be included in all the welcome centers, which is great. Everyone was very happy with that. We had a special budget meeting. It was held on the 16th for the Recreation Committee, and we had 9 individuals attend asking for more pickleball.
Pickleball.
Not
Pickleball.
Pickleball was a P. Anyway, pickleball courts. So I guess the squeaky wheels are going to get greased because it is being addressed in the new budget. We've had a tremendous amount of interest in more pickleball courts. And they definitely have said they want to keep them up at Metfield because the games are so short, and that you need not spread them around the Bella Vista. They want them centered in one location because they can all play then and have more contests between small groups. And they also want them north and south. They don't want them east and west because of the sun. So go figure. I guess that's the way football fields are laid out too. And lastly, that's it. Okay.
There we go.
Thank you, Deb. Any questions for Deb?
Just a comment, Deb, you're right. Tennis is the same way. It's a social event, and we probably years ago should have put all of the courts at Kingsdale, because that's where they want to congregate. That's where they form the leagues and the groups. And pickleball's the same animal. They want to get into leagues and develop groups, and the current ones that we have are east-west because it's a takeoff from the 2 tennis courts that were north-south, so you're right. But I think we've got potential budgeting for more courts at that area.
Okay, go ahead.
Rex, you're going to deliver the report from the Golf Committee, Golf Task Force, correct?
Yes.
Are you also going to do it for the Golf Committee, or are you just combining everything into one?
I'll just put it all in one.
Okay.
Okay, would you like to present that now, or do you want to let, a little bit lower down on the agenda, we have the task force recommendations? So you're okay waiting? Okay.
Okay. Community involvement did not meet in July. Dylan, do you have something you'd like to say? The next meeting is, et cetera?
Yeah, so our next meeting will be August 2nd, next Thursday at 6 p.m. right here.
Deb, 6 p.m. Deb.
Not 6 a.m. Just clarifying.
Deb and I both got here early, losing track of what time we should have been here. But we were early. Okay, any other announcements for the advisories? If not, old business does not seem to be in abundance. We'll move to new business. Charity Giving Committee. There we go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. My name is Robert Mitchell, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Charitable Giving Committee. As the chairperson with me this evening is Tom Throne. Also members are Tony Licolusi.
Lakazi.
You know the name better than I do, and John Rice. Our charge is to seek recommendations, applications, if you will, for grant applications. We had 6 that we looked at this year, and we were able to fund all of them. Those recommendations are in your packet, and basically we're asking for your approval of these expenditures to these organizations and at the amount recommended. And beyond that, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, one of the questions came up earlier. Are these projects these people put in for, or just for general budget?
Projects mostly.
Okay.
I would say the one that probably isn't is the Bella Vista Foundation.
Okay.
They do have a project on tap, however, right now. They're upgrading their website. So I would say that this money is probably going to go help develop that website.
And the committee follows up with each of these to make sure that they completed their project and
Yes, ma'am.
when the funding is made. Okay, any other questions?
I also wanted to comment that all of the recommendations from the committee are in compliance with policy 1.03.6.
Okay. Any other questions? Can we call for a vote?
Yeah, I move that we approve the total contribution by, as recommended by the Charitable Giving Committee.
I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion. Any further questions? And we do thank the committee extremely highly for all their hard work. We appreciate that.
All in favor?
We'll take a vote. Okay.
Any opposed? Thank you.
You may report back that's unanimous.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
Next up on the agenda is the search for an architect for the country club. Just wanted to give you an update. In your packet on page 44, you will see a copy of the request for proposal that was sent out to the 3 candidates. We have set up meetings with all 3. We met with one of them this morning. So we have 2 more to go. So far it's going well, and we anticipate that we will receive all of the proposals on time. Any questions? Next up on page 44 of your packet, you'll see a capital request. This is for number 12 Green at Scottsdale. If you recall, when we originally talked about this, we did not anticipate that this originally was going to be a capital project. It got modified as it went along, and it turned into a capital project. So we were requesting the release of funds. Actually, the green is already there. It's already built. We were requesting that you authorize a capital project so that we can move these funds from our operating account into our capital. David, did you want to comment on any of this?
No, we've talked about that before when we got out there to looking at number 12. It was so severe. We were scared of a couple of things. Actually, it could have cost more than this to fix the 12th green. what we were afraid of when we got out there, and we didn't know, because the only person that was around here, and I'm not throwing Jim under the bus on any of this, but the only person that was here when that green was built was Jim. And even he and I were afraid that we would find rock under that green and not be able to fix it. And Keith and I looked at several options there. We even looked at trying to come up with different ways to raise that green and flatten it out a little bit by having a deeper mix in the greens. And when we found out that there was 5.5 feet of fall from the back of the 12th green to the front, that's not something you can fix by just adding more mix. So we had to regrade the green, and that's where the extra cost came out. And when you have to regrade the green, you have to regrade the surrounds so that everything ties in. I think that a majority of our golfers are going to find that the green is a lot more playable. You can't tell a great deal of difference from the tee. If you're over there looking at it from the 12th tee, when it's completed and we're open, nobody will probably notice a major difference. But when they get around the green or even hit the green, as we don't often do on the 12th hole, except for that one gentleman that made a hole-in-one after complaining it was too severe to play, that you will be able to putt that 12th green and have a chance, a reasonable chance of making a par or getting it up and down. But what really happened there was we found things that we didn't expect to find. And that's always the case when you're doing renovations. When the cost went up, we were working with this contractor on a cost plus daily, hourly basis. And we found out that it was going to take us 5 or 6 days instead of a couple.
Okay. We have 2 motions. On page 49. There are 2 motions, one for the capital project and one to waiver for not getting 3 bids.
Correct, yeah, and unfortunately, when it was originally below the threshold, we did not realize that we were going to need 3 bids. And also, when Keith was looking for a contractor, this individual was the one that was available.
That's correct. We're in the same situation as we were about doing work either at Branchwood. The contractor's so busy right now, and many times on a project this small, the guys will turn it down, as they did in this case.
Okay, in regard to number 12, on Scottsdale, I move that we approve the capital budget for $51,000 and also the waiver for not getting 3 bids on the project.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion. Anybody discussion on it, further discussion? If not, we'll take a vote.
All in favor? Any opposed? Looks like unanimous.
Next up is the Trails Agreement and the Trails Maintenance Agreement. This is related to the expansion of the trail system into the central portion of the community. We have Aaron Rushing here from MWA Trailblazers. I didn't know if you wanted to step up and say anything or field any questions.
I'd love to. I'm Aaron Rushing with Northern Sonoma Trailblazers. I was sitting here thinking last time I was at this board meeting, and I think it was before we did the back 40. And it's exciting to see the back 40 built now, and it's successful. We had a big enduro race there over the weekend. So I thank this board for letting us build trails on the POA property. It's been a dream of mine. I've been a long-time resident of Bella Vista, so it's really great, and I'm really excited moving forward in this next phase. It's a little bit different, and I'm ready to go if you guys are ready. Happy to answer any questions about what we're doing in this next phase as well.
John, I was speaking with you just before the meeting, and you said, what was the number you gave me?
All the trail usage?
Correct.
101,000 something trail use counts on their radar count. And that was ended in the end of June and the year previous to that. So
18 months?
No, 12 months.
Oh, 12 months. 12 months. Over 100,000 in 12 months.
101,000.
Now, that's not necessarily different people. I mean, the same people,
Yeah,
but
what they're talking about is we have trail cameras scattered out in Bella Vista. We have 7 of them. We monitor them every month. We pull the data off and just see how month over month, year over year. Now we've had it in about a year, a little over a year now. We do this on all the trail systems, and so it's neat to watch these numbers slowly creep up. And And then, I want to get the year-over-year data just to see where it's going. It's, weather just like golf, it has a factor in if they're out there using the trails or not too. So it's neat to watch this grow.
I have a question. If you have 7 counters spread around, you don't have any way of knowing how many people trip more cameras in a day.
And that's correct. And that's why the month over month or year over year, you can see that as long as we don't move them around, you're going to get the same numbers. And we're watching them just slowly tick up every month and every year. But you're right. It could be the same person trip all 7 of them.
Does having the cameras in different places, does it help you get an idea of which areas are most popular?
Absolutely. Yeah, the one with the highest use is in the back of Blowing Springs. So that's kind of the a lot of people start there, and that's where they go. And we have them, we scatter them all over the system. So we see which trails are getting used more than others. Yeah. It's fun to watch.
Aaron, I'm more excited about the central 40 than the back 40, and for the reason of the crossings on some of our major streets will be hopefully much superior to those flashing at-grade lights, I think.
Jim, we're glad you brought that up. What's different in the back 40 from the central 40? The central 40 is, if you look at 279 and 340, they're both run kind of east and west, and they both do this, and there's really just no place to cross safely. Yeah. So we're looking at doing tunnels, 10-foot diameter pipe tunnels, kind of like what we have on the golf courses, to be able to ride through. So on the back 40 where you're going up, maybe over these humps and you're having to stop and wait for cars, well, there's 10 places on the central side that you'll be able to just go through the road and keep on going. So it's much safer and easier to ride if you're on that bike.
And some of that specifically is Chelsea, and some 340 and some 279.
Exactly. Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I think we have 2 on Chelsea and the other ones are on 279, 340.
Are there any plans in place to retrofit the back 40 so that you've solved that problem?
There's a couple places on the back 40 that you could. There's only so many places you can put the tunnels. You need a road to be crowned like this. You can't put them in, where it's flat. But there are a couple places I've looked at. We're going to experiment with this on this side. We don't have a lot of experience putting these pipes underneath roads. We don't. Most of them are at grade. But I think we're going to see how this works, and maybe there is an opportunity to go look. There's a piece of road on Kingsland, just north of Bowling Spring, that the road's going to elevate and the trail goes up like this and down the side. That is one example of where we could, assuming that we're successful with the tunnels on this side, that we could go in there and retrofit an under road crossing. So, yeah, good question.
What's the start date for work on those?
Microphone, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. What's the start date for the work on those, and what's the completion projected to be?
We would honestly, we have contractors ready 30, 45, 60 days. We have some permitting left to do on the tunnels and the road, but we've got our contractors lined up ready to start building dirt trails.
Okay, and then your expected completion would be when?
About a year.
Okay.
Yeah, 47 miles, so it's a little bit bigger than the back 40. The back 40s, we were pushed to get the back 40 done before the end of summer. So we really crammed it all in as quick as we could in 9 months. This side, we don't want to be that much pressure on us. So we're estimating about 12 months.
So Tom, then our maintenance agreement would go into effect upon the opening of the trail?
No, is it on the opening or?
Yeah, once the license, the construction license terminates, then it transitions over to our responsibility. That's correct.
So we shouldn't expect to see any expenditure on our behalf until we take over the trails, which will be towards the latter portion, possibly into 2020.
Yeah. So 2018 won't be any. I mean, we're out there building trail. The leaves are going to fall, which is no big deal. We don't have that growing season like we do in April and June. 2019, we're building trail. I mean, almost the majority of 2019 through the growing season. On the back 40, we did the deal with the fast and the volunteer. If you volunteer, you get to go out there and ride the trail. I would anticipate we'll do something like that on this section too. You know, as long as it's safe pieces.
And then are you expecting we had talked about this at the meeting the other day, are you expecting the volunteer base for the maintenance process to be emulating what is going on in front?
I would like to think so, yes. You know, again, we don't know until we get it on the ground. We've learned a lot from the back 40. But I would think it would be, I would hope that we would get volunteers to help us maintain.
So do you have any formal program or for trail maintenance participation, some sort of, some way to recruit and to then promote the maintenance process?
Yeah, our FAST group, Friends of Arkansas Senior Track, they kind of run that program, and they're doing a great job at it from what I can tell. But I would hope with moving over to the central side that you're going to get the residents that are in this central area to help maintain trail too. And I see a lot of them in the back 40. Those are people that live over there, live right by it, and they're kind of contributing to that maintenance need. And I hope we're going to get that same level of wanting to help maintain it on this central side too.
Okay.
And then you're also involved with the Razorback Greenway, and there's apparently a dedication of the extension from Lake Bella Vista up around Mercy Clinic and then to Blowing Springs, the 28th I read.
This Saturday 2 days from now.
9 o'clock?
At 9 o'clock in the morning. We're going to cut the ribbon on the next piece of the Razorback Greenway going on. We're going to keep going as far as we can go, I hope. But yeah, thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, it's exciting. If y'all haven't been out there and seen this piece of trail, it is 12 feet wide, concrete, goes right along the creek. It's really a beautiful piece of trail. It turned out really, really well. Really well. It's got a spur that goes over the Blowing Springs.
Tom, I don't know if we're asking for action tonight.
Yeah,
I do trust the process of your attorneys and our attorney developing the agreement, which is somewhat similar to the back 40 agreement, or whether it becomes an amendment to it, bureaucratic process with the city's help. I don't care. I just want our part to be approved, personally.
Yeah, and so if you look at the motion, the way we phrased this, we've given ourselves a little bit of flexibility depending upon what the city decides they want to do, but the essence of either way we go will be identical. I mean, the end result is the same, and so that's why we had Doug go through it, and he feels comfortable that the way we phrase this motion will accommodate that goal or accomplish that goal.
Call a motion?
I make a motion to authorize management to execute the trail license and trail maintenance agreements for the new trails located in the central portion of the POA, or to enter into an agreement amending the original 2015 trail license and trail maintenance agreements.
And I'll second that.
Discussion. Did everybody get their questions answered?
I've
Any
got
other?
one piece for that, Ruth, in terms of stewardship and volunteerism. I do believe that the POA can do a good job of encouraging those people who are going to be having trail go through their properties or nearby their properties to extend that type of ability to them, and that we really want to see them step up to the plate and be good stewards of it and embrace the investment.
Okay.
I think we can do a better job there.
Any other questions? Statements? Call for a vote?
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the revision in the golf course strategy, and Rex is going to present. Did I turn this off? My God.
Planning on that.
I got a back up here.
Okay. You got to cover that.
Microphone.
Takes a second for it.
That's probably better.
Yeah.
All right, well, he's pulling that up. You guys have,
Rex, do you have?
yeah. So, we were tasked to try to look at looking at what to do with the Birchdale, Kingwood, and our golf course strategy.
All the way at the bottom.
Way at the bottom. Got it?
Golf course strategy. And so, the committee members were.
That's not gonna work, I'm gonna have to do it.
Okay, so give me a button, there we go. So the committee members were listed there. You guys know most of these people, and believe me, you put these people in a room, it's hard to get us to agree on anything. So I think what we came up with is pretty, pretty feasible. And the main thing is that we don't think that at this point, any of us know what the data is going to be or what the situation will be at any given time regarding the valley courses. So we proposed that we create a cross-functional team to review this. And they would review it periodically, and they would review it in the event of any kind of a major flood and the need for a major expenditure to fix a flood. So these are their responsibilities. The biggest one to start off with would be to develop a set of decision criteria so that you don't start from scratch when something happens, so that you have some things on the table that you're looking at and you're going to use to make a decision when you have an event. Meet about once a year or even more perhaps to evaluate the portfolio and see if we are sized appropriately. And seek input from the staff, obviously. And then develop a recommendation as to whether the courses or a portion of the course to remain open or turn to use by the recreation department. And that would also include the time frame in which this would happen. A majority of vote is needed, and just go ahead and finish up this slide. And we present that to the board of directors, and obviously it'll be you guys' decision as to what to actually do. The makeup of this committee would be 3 members of the golf committee and 3 members of the recreation committee. It also would require that at least a majority of the 6 members vote on any actions that are taken. So that means that you got to have one guy from the other committee vote for something. So that's the main thing that we came up with. So in terms of the short-term strategy of what we think Birchdale South pretty much are currently open, just for the part that's closed is going to remain closed, and that's pretty much not on the table. North would become would stay open in the foreseeable future and would be in the portfolio of that committee to decide what to do with it. And then as far as Kingswood's concerned, sort of the same thing, remain open for the foreseeable future, and it would also be in the realm of that committee. Examples of what kind of decision criteria might be used to decide these things. One is rounds dropping below 120,000. A couple of words I'll throw in for my 2 cents worth right here. I'm 62 years old, and I'm the very end of the baby boomers. So in the next 3 to 5 years, there's going to be an awful lot of people my age or maybe a little bit older retiring. We need to be recruiting those people to come here as this retirement community. We've had some good publicity, and we need to be taking advantage of that in order to get some new golfers because our golfing community is aging. Okay? Other criteria that we looked at would be major flood damage. And if we are successful in getting the rounds up, then we might look at investing some money to bring the Kingswood back up to standard. So ARCMO, we pretty much, at this point, we think we take it off the table. And it's not recommended to be included into the golf team portfolio, but it should be said that this board would have the power at any time to pull courses or put courses back into the portfolio. And as far as the country clubs goes, we just recommend that it be targeted for flood mitigation as our primary course. And that's about all I got to say on that. As far as the golf committee meeting goes, the main thing that we talked about that is on the table is looking at a new strategy for handicap golfers and applying that. And you guys, I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but that'll come up for a vote in the next meeting. And then you also need to get signed up for the Alzheimer's tournament coming up. So, all right, that's all I got. Any questions?
Any questions, I mean, before we get started? Okay, do you want me to take this? You want to take this?
I'll cover the first section. You
Okay,
cover the
that's
last.
fine.
You cover the last part.
That's fine.
So the board met and discussed the recommendations of the golf task force. And what I want to do is I want to start with the most important items first in order of priority. So a little bit different ordering than how Rex had it. With regards to Birksdale South, the 9 holes of Birksdale that are currently closed, in the conversation, the board has not yet voted, and we're asking that the board vote today, but in the conversation that the board had regarding that, they were in full agreement with the recommendations from the task force. Does anybody have any further comments regarding Birksdale South at this time?
Tom, can I, again, I perhaps should know this, but I don't. Can you give me an estimate of the costs, the differential in maintaining the 9 holes of Birksdale that are currently closed as a green area versus as a golf course?
Yeah. Our estimate is $175,000 per year. Now, let me throw in a couple of caveats, okay? So if we closed and maintained it as a park, we would save the $175,000 probably in year 3. In year 1 and 2, we have equipment that is rolling off, and so we wouldn't save that as quickly. Right. Second of all is the definition of park. If it's a park that is just a green area, that's pretty straightforward. Right. But if the park turns into an arboretum, right, with flowers being planted on a consistent basis, well, that's a different story. Okay. But we anticipate a savings of $175,000 per year.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Moving on from there, Birksdale North. With regards to this, the committee recommended that it will remain open unless there is a triggering event. This will come up regarding the review committee, but by and large, with regards to keeping the golf course, the 9 holes open for now, the board in the conversation was in full agreement with this recommendation from the task force. Any further comments from the board?
You don't have this that you can pull up?
No, I do not.
Okay, that's fine.
With regards to Kingswood, Kingswood would remain open unless there is a triggering event, and the board was in agreement that if rounds were to drop down below 120,000 per year, we would need to look at it, but they have task management with doing everything possible to make sure that we don't drop below that, and that's kind of what you were talking about, Rex. I think you were touching on that regarding where you have the note that says marketing question mark. Make sure that we're open-minded.
121 versus 119, or got courses closed for some other reason. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can affect the reasonableness of that number.
Right, and I think what we're trying to do is just trying to set a level of expectation. I don't, we play 119,900 and I don't think that's what we're looking at. I think we're looking for what is reasonable. I looked at the analysis that we had put together earlier in the year for a different presentation, and if the rounds were to continue to be on the same, well, hopefully they don't continue to slide, but if they were to continue to slide on the current pace that they are, you'd be looking at 5 years from now before you hit 120,000.
The trouble is that our golfing community is aging, and so that rate of decline
could increase. I agree. I don't disagree. Next up, if we were to go on an optimistic side, if we were to increase to 165,000, we would want to investigate looking into what flood mitigation steps we could take. And then the last example of a triggering event is if a major flood were to come through, we would have to reevaluate that. So I think we're in agreement on all three of those points that the task force put together. Any questions? With regards to the country club, I reported earlier that we were talking to an architect. We're moving forward as reasonably quickly as possible. In the conversations this morning, it was asked how quickly we want to move forward, and I said, well, you know, in some ways we feel we're sitting on a ticking time bomb. When the next flood is going to come is really unpredictable, and we want to move as quickly as possible. I would rather have the work done a couple months prior to the next flood than following the next flood. So the board is in full agreement with the recommendations of the task force. With regards to ARCMO, the comment was, you know, the POA will not pursue a golf course at ARCMO at this time. The ARCMO remains an asset of the POAs. So I think the board is in agreement on that portion of the recommendations from the task force.
Okay.
Want me to keep on going?
If you'd like to, go ahead.
Okay. With regards to the golf review committee, the board liked this idea and liked this idea so much so that they actually expounded upon it. And so what they've added is a couple items, actually quite a number of items. Leah, do you have a copy that you can get Rex? And any other? First one, sitting members of the JACs can sit on the committee. We wanted to make sure that current members of the committees can serve.
Oh, and Tom, that's all committees, not just these two.
Yeah, and that's the next item on the list is, as opposed to limiting this to just the two JACs, we want to be more inclusive, and so what we're asking is, or we're recommending is 2 committee members from each of the JACs will serve. The next is that 2 members of the board would serve as liaisons, which is fairly normal for all our committees. The next item, and Rex, this is kind of, this idea came from your point about marketing, is we want to make sure that the committee is not only reactive but is proactive. So let's review our marketing of golf. Can we do additional things to make sure that we don't hit that 120,000? So as opposed to just sitting back and waiting for nature to dictate, are there things that we can do? Can we look at riparian zones in certain areas of the golf course? Those types of things. Looking proactively, not reactively. We also feel that having the committee meet on a quarterly basis would probably be more prudent. To meet just once a year, there may be too much of a time space between them. So we feel that, and if they're going to talk about being proactive and golf marketing, for example, probably need to meet more than just once a year. The committee members, there'll be a subset to their respective committees. So the reporting lines will be, these committee members will report to their respective JACs. Meetings will be open to the public. The committee will encourage the community to provide feedback. They will seek input. Minutes will be taken and published on the POA's website. The committee will issue recommendations when needed to the board of directors, but ultimately it will be a decision of the board. And the last is, since we didn't want to just limit this to just golf, we felt that it should, a couple ideas came up, either the interdisciplinary community advisory group or the community development coordination group. Two last items. In the event of an emergency, committee would be willing to move fast at the request of the board of directors. For example, we've had instances where we had flooding and the community really came forth, and we were able to gather up a lot of volunteers to help us clean up. So that would be an example of moving fast. Since this is a brand new committee being formed at the request of the chairperson, which is ultimately where the authority is coming from, we felt that we would view this as a one-year experiment. Let's see how the committee works, let's see how it functions, and then we can determine whether it will become a permanent committee or will continue to be a working group.
Go ahead.
Point of clarification, as we're asking for 2 members from each of the advisory committees, this group is not limited to golf only. They are to
So we
promote Bella Vista.
Any issues.
Yeah, so we are, that is
Everything
correct.
in Bella
That
Vista.
is- But it's, remember, we have, just to clarify, we have 4 standing committees.
Yeah.
Lakes, rec, golf, and community involvement, so that will be 2 from each. And the committees will determine who will serve, the 2 that will serve on this subcommittee.
Right, but they can talk about things like improving the lakes, the parks.
There
or
are-
anything that they feel will benefit all of the membership of Bella
Yes.
Vista, they can talk about and bring suggestions to us.
There are very few issues in Bella Vista that do not cross over all 4 disciplines or all 4 areas. And that's kind of what we thought, to bring them together as one, and so they can talk to each other and feed off each other for ideas, how we can help each other.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rex.
So, one of our thoughts on the makeup of that committee was that it be balanced between golf and non-golf. The committee you're proposing would be heavily weighted toward non-golf.
Correct, you are completely correct, and I don't, always remember this is a recommendation, and as opposed to, and I don't think you're saying this is not against golf, this is an inclusive approach. Let's make sure everybody is talking about it. It's not going to be a situation, what we do not envision is, well, 6 members voted against the golf course and the 2 golf representatives voted for. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to be more inclusive than exclusive.
I know that's not what you're trying to do, but I'm concerned that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I hope that the way we have it set up is correct. It's possible within this 1-year experiment, maybe we will learn that we're incorrect and we need to make some tweaks to it a year from now. But the effort being, let's make sure we include more representation and make sure that we receive input from our community.
Susan, you had your hand.
So I just have, I think, I like the idea. I have one concern, and that is scope management. That if in the beginning here, brand new group and all that, that we scope to one or two topics, and I hope that golf is one of those. Otherwise, my concern would be that the committee will spend a year getting organized. And to Ron's point, that a lot of what needs to be done is getting facts and different decision criteria and all of those risk analysis things done. And if we're if the group is trying to work on 8 different projects, nothing will get done. So I think limiting the scope for the first year would be beneficial.
Okay. Go ahead, Patrick.
It would seem to me that just to throw this out as an idea is it has a couple of things that we need to attend to. I would think that although we may not be considering establishing a formal committee going forward, that this may be something that the Rules and Regulations Committee may consider to try to give some structure to the idea going in, as opposed to leaving it wide open. You know, the Rules and Regulations Committee could talk about, let's say, some sort of who is the director, how often, you know, how meetings are called, you know, some of the formal processes that we could take from the current JACs and other committees that we have, you know, and we could adapt them to this, just to make sure that it gets kicked off and running, as opposed to asking the people who are on the committee to start putting it together. I mean, that would be
I agree with several of those things, that it will take some time to get it underway and get it going. We have 2 separate issues to discuss, but go ahead, Mike. Do you have a question or a statement?
No, I was just agreeing with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he made a good point, and I'm also on the Rules and Regs Committee, and I think that'd be a good task for our committee to work with Doug, especially to create a scope, as Susan mentioned, a charter, and a definition of really who kind of declares the scope this first year, and it'd most likely be the chair of the board. You know, a limited scope this first experimental year, and a charter of who would conduct the meetings and all of that. I think I'd be willing for our group, and David or Jerry's on our group too. We could tackle that within the next month or 2.
Yeah, and I would think, you know, that what we would come up with would be amenable to any sort of changes. You know, we're not talking about setting things in stone, but at least forming a foundation upon which we can move forward fairly expeditiously.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Before we go any further, on behalf of the entire board, I want to thank your committee for the fine job they did in coming together, gathering information in the meetings you had, et cetera, and we do appreciate. At this time, shall we go ahead and call for a vote on the proposal?
Yeah, I think what we'll have to do is modify it,
Can we do it by accepting the recommendations and then going ahead with the review team will be adjusted as?
You could go with recommendations 1 through 5 on this memo.
Okay.
But we also want the review team part of that recommendation.
Let's make that separate.
Okay.
Make the first approval on the first 5, and then the second motion would be regarding tasking the rules and regs with the project.
Okay, so we'll adjust that.
Do you want me to give this a dab?
Sure.
I make a motion to. I can't make. You go for it then.
I make a motion to accept the recommendations numbers 1 through 5 in the subject memo board action of golf task force recommendations.
Very good. We have a second.
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion. Any further discussion? If not, now you can call for a vote.
All right, all in favor of that motion? Any opposed? Unanimous.
Okay.
So the second motion would be to form the golf review team. Is that what we're looking at?
Actually, I don't know if we need a motion, we just need a directive from the
Directive.
board. The board directs the Rules and Regs Committee
Pick this up
to
and go with it.
formalize the creation of this new interdisciplinary group.
So
Jim?
pretty much, you just want to sit on this idea until rules and regs can put some,
Kind of put some teeth into it.
Yeah,
Put some teeth into it.
I agree, I think,
we table it.
Was the board in consensus that that's what you want us to do, the Rules and Regs Committee to go forward and do that?
Yeah, but I would, in keeping with Tom's comments earlier about being proactive and making, I think you said, Tom, that we'd rather do something before we have a flood instead of recovering from a flood. I think that, no, and so, and consequently, what I'm going to recommend is that the Rules and Regulations Committee meet in an expedited fashion to begin to give substance to this.
will the board have to vote on, they will have to vote, but they will have to vote twice on what the rules and regs come up with.
Correct, yeah.
They will.
Because Ruth is the one, the board chair has the power to form the committee, so once the Rules and
But it's,
Regs gives
but,
a
but Doug,
recommendation.
if it's not a formal committee, okay, we're simply using the mechanism of the Rules and Regulations Committee to give structure. And so it's an informal committee and then,
not a policy.
so it doesn't need two readings because it's not a formal
no, it
policy
doesn't need-
change.
Okay, that's where I was going.
Can we advise or ask the advisory committees to pick or select two members to be on this committee at their June meeting
We
or
can-
July meeting?
We can, but let's get it formulated first. Okay,
Okay.
you wanted a motion. I recommend the motion be something to the nature of the board authorized and directs the Rules and Regs Committee to return by the September meeting with a recommendation on formalizing the creation of this new working group.
As Tom stated. Someone can make a motion to move to.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Questions, discussion? If not,
You can have it done in time for a vote in August,
No, I said September.
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 I said September. If they can do it beforehand, I said by September.
By
So if they can do it beforehand, then that's great. Otherwise, they have 60 days.
Okay. When we talked about this, we were, very excited for the idea of doing something proactively and pulling all of these groups together. And I hate to just put it off. I wish we could do it today.
It's at the discretion of the board.
I think,
Maybe shouldn't do it until we know exactly what we're doing.
yeah, I think we
I
need,
think that's a prudent
Is that a good way to
statement.
put it?
That's
we
a
may
prudent statement.
encourage the Rules and Rec to kind of get excited and move up a little
Let the
bit.
legal eagles lay their eggs.
Can we encourage the committees to be considering this and who they might put on this
So they were ready to
task
go
force?
as soon as we
So that we're ready to
can.
go whenever we can get this enacted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can send out an invite and let them know.
Susan,
Yeah, the board liaisons can kind of fill them in too when they have their meetings.
Susan,
So just a suggestion on process. So I know that most of the committees are really focused on projects and pricing for the August meetings, but it would be really nice for September if we have enough of a structure that, that we can explain what's going to happen, what the roles and responsibilities are, in not so much a formal way, but at least a general way, so that, we can kind of get our thoughts together. I'm concerned that with a lot of formal process, that it will never get off the ground. So I think it's an experiment for a year. We need some structure, but less is more on this one.
and that's kind of the direction we were looking at.
I agree, those are good points, and it may be, Rules and Regs will get together quickly and maybe agree with you that we're not having to add this as a new policy in our overall documents, perhaps, because we're not we're creating a one-year temporary group at this stage. We're not creating something that'll become total policy forever, so. Well, we'll wrestle with that, Pat and Jerry and I, real quickly.
Okay.
Motion on the table.
Okay. Are you all right with that?
Call for the motion, vote on the motion on the table. All in favor?
We're sending it to the rec committee, or the rules and reg.
Rules and
Okay.
regs.
Rules and regs.
Regulations committee.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, and we once again appreciate and thank you. Where's my announcements? Where'd they go to? Okay. Okay, anything else for the betterment of the cause? If not, the announcements, the GM meeting is Thursday, August 9th, 2:30 in the boardroom. It's a closed session. The work session is Thursday, August 16th at 8 a.m. in the boardroom. And the regular meeting is Thursday, August 23rd at 6:30 in the boardroom. No other items, we stand adjourned.